Hello and welcome to another eye precision tutorial or explanation video. This video is a bit more specific. It's about setting the pupil threshold. It's one of the kind of more confusing elements, I think, of the whole program. So I thought a quick video just to explain what it actually does. The good news is most of the time you won't actually need to do anything with it. So the pupil threshold is this slider here, and to the right, or the auto set threshold. When that's turned on, it should take care of 90%, 95% of the videos you'll want to analyze. But it's useful to know what it does for the occasions that that's not quite enough. So you can adjust the pupil threshold here, but what does that do? So to explain that, I need to take a step back about how the program works. What the program is doing with your videos is looking on each individual frame for, among other things, a dark circle to recognize as the pupil. It needs to know then how dark a circle it is looking for. So I've intentionally chosen a video here with some fairly bright reflections. It's got a bit of a screen reflection and a much brighter lamp. There'll always be a bit of a reflection, but this one's a little bit more than would be ideal. And so this is relatively light pupil. In some cases it will be almost entirely black depending on the setup. So when you've chosen your eye area and your pupil, what the auto thresholding is going to try and do is measure the relative darkness, blackness of the pupil, or relative brightness. And it gives that a number. And then it gives a little bit of extra space, and that is the automatically set threshold. Then when you run the analysis, when you click Start Tracking, in every single frame of the video, it's going to look for areas, circular areas, with a brightness below this threshold value. Anything which is above that threshold will not be considered as a possible pupil. So for example, this blue area, nice and circular, but definitely far too bright, way above this area, threshold number. So that would never be considered as a pupil. So when may you want to change the threshold? Well, first we're going to look at one which has worked well. So in this case, the threshold was set to 95. Going to filter this a bit to make it a bit more clear. I'll explain the filters a bit in another video as well. What you can see here is a pretty smooth, relatively low noise line. And if we watch the video, the red circle staying right around the pupil. It's not getting much bigger or smaller at any time, it's staying right on there. Whereas in this case, the threshold was set intentionally a little high. I think this was around 120. I'll filter, zoom in again so I can see it more clearly again. And you start to see all these spikes. And if we watch the video, and I'll skip along to where those spikes are, what you'll see is already even before the spikes begin, it's a little noisier. And the circle's a little bit large around the pupil. It's accepting more area, so it's accepting this brighter part here as still part of the pupil. And then once we get through to the spikes here, what you see is it really starts to lose the pupil a bit. This area up here was sometimes considered dark enough as well to be the pupil, and it starts to confuse the program. And again, it gets much bigger there, and that's because the total area was still dark enough to pass under the pupil threshold. And to really exaggerate it, I set this pupil threshold very high, I think around 140, 150. And you'll see, considering most of the iris as dark enough to possibly be a pupil, and you get no useful data at all. So when you see this happening, if you get a really big circle, particularly around the iris, then you know that your pupil threshold is almost certainly too high. And then going in the opposite direction, this is with a reduced pupil threshold. Can't remember the exact value, but a little under the automatically set threshold. And what you'll see, all these spikes, all these wobbles here, it's excluding the part of the pupil here with the reflection. So it's only accepting the darkest part of the pupil because the threshold is lower. You'll see that the red circle starts to get too small at times. It becomes smaller than it was, it flickers around a little bit. And that's because of a slightly too low pupil threshold. And then a final example just to really exaggerate it. The threshold set really low, and a lot of the time it's not even finding a pupil at all. It's guessing every so often, it's trying to find anything. I'm not sure why it's going for such a light area there, but the threshold is so low that even the actual pupil is almost never recognised as a pupil. Go through to the end, when it gets a bit darker here, then it starts to find it occasionally, but even then it's missing it most of the time. If you find that your pupil threshold is constantly going too high or too low, you can always tweak it in the advanced settings. So when the pupil threshold is set, it measures that brightness of the marked pupil at the start and then adds a little bit of wiggle room on top. The amount of wiggle room can be changed in the advanced settings. So that was under settings at the top in the menu and then advanced settings. And you have auto thresholds for the goggles mode and the smartphone mode. You can see my settings here. Depending on your setup, depending on your circumstances, you may want to set these a little bit higher and lower. But this is also dependent on the lighting situation at the time. It's also dependent on eye color. So there's probably not a fixed number that you will always be able to use. In some cases, you might just have to analyze the video 2 or 3 times, manually adjusting the pupil threshold until you get the right value. This is less of a problem with goggles, but with the smartphone, the lighting's a bit more variable. So just to summarize, the automatic threshold tries to use the darkness of the pupil which you've marked. If the pupil marker on the video keeps getting too large, you're going to want to adjust down. And if it gets too small or doesn't find a pupil at all, you're going to want to adjust up.